Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to yet another episode of Rendezvous with Anza Saqib on CxO Global TV. CxO Global Forum is a knowledge-sharing platform for all C-levels across Pakistan and the globe. We take massive pride in contributing to the knowledge economy, and every time we've got some very special guests with us who are not only thought leaders, but domain experts who've spent a considerable amount of time in their fields and have a lot to give back to society and contribute to the knowledge economy. Today, we've got a very special lady with us. Her name is Fatima Hyder. She's the Chief Strategy Officer at Z2C Limited. Fatima, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Fatima, you've had a tremendous career, and you're one of the few very accomplished women in our country, and we're so proud of you. But I want to know where this journey began. So where did you go to school? Where did you grow up? What courses you studied? How did you end up becoming the CSO of such a big firm?
That's like half my life you want summarized. So I grew up in the Middle East. All of my schooling was in the Middle East, in Riyadh and Jeddah. And then after high school, I went to Toronto to study. I did political science and communication studies. And then after that, I landed a job at a media agency. That was my first job. And it's a little bit ironic because all throughout my university career, I learned that advertising is terrible and it manipulates people, and the impact of advertising on society and what that's doing to people. And then I decided to join that industry. So I worked in media for a year in Toronto. Then I moved to the UAE. I worked in media again there at a couple of agencies. I got to do a secondment at Emirates Airline with their communications department.
Lovely.
Yeah, it was amazing. I got to see the work coming in from multiple media agencies across the world. So that kind of exposure was really, really valuable. And then after that, I went back to Toronto, was lucky enough to work on accounts like Unilever, Kraft, J&J. So yeah, no, definitely it was, and I got to work with some great people. I think that's been the highlight of my career. And then about 5 years back, I moved to Pakistan for family reasons. And I was lucky enough to be employed by Z2C, which is, obviously globally affiliated with Publicis Group. And yeah, it's been a great run so far. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like a wonderful journey. And Fatima, you've literally seen the evolution of the media and advertising agency in Pakistan, because obviously, and around the world as well, but primarily of concern is Pakistan, because you've seen, I'm sure you've seen the era where, TV adverts and billboards were on the rise, but now, media and advertising has evolved to so much more. How have you witnessed this evolution? Are we at par with the rest of the world?
I think we are. In some cases we are, in some cases we're not. I think you're right. I've seen a big change from like 2016 when I joined to now. It's almost night and day in terms of what we're doing within the digital space. I think in certain instances we've kind of skipped over some of those growth and development steps that other markets have seen. And so we've kind of leapfrogged and we're at a certain stage. But I mean, in several areas, I think there's still room for development. I think when it comes to data and our understanding of it and us leveraging data, there's definitely lots of room to grow there across a lot of the clients that we work with. But in other cases and in other scenarios, we're neck to neck with other markets and what's happening in the digital space there. I mean, take influencers, for example. They've blown up across the scene in Pakistan. That's nobody's business. And obviously there's learnings to be had and things like that. And obviously we can learn from the mistakes that other markets and other influencers have made across the globe, and they're sort of as they were evolving. But I think by far and large we're pretty much neck to neck in terms of how things are.
So speaking of influencers, Fatima, I was reading a study in the Harvard Business Review a couple of days ago, and I came across this piece of information which said that compared to about 20 years ago, now people are exposed to 45% more adverts throughout their day, whether it's online on their phones, on when they're going to work, and so on and so forth. However, one thing that's interesting and that's changed is the fact that people now like to do business with those that they know, like, and trust. So, for example, when you look at the Twitter following for Tesla, there's only about like 2 million followers. But if you look at Elon Musk, there's more than 6 million followers. Same goes for Sesame Street versus Kermit the Frog. What is your take? What is your take on this trend? How can we best utilize it? And how serious should we take influencers when it comes to marketing?
I mean, in terms of my take on the fact that, people have a bigger following than brands, I think that's just by default in terms of people are more trustworthy generally, right? Like faces, they're humanized. There's aspects to them that you can relate to versus brands. It's hard to relate to a name or a logo, right? Or even a product for that matter. So I think it's only natural that, people are, that's why we try to give brands personalities when we talk about marketing. Like, you come up with an entire brand house, ke, iska emotional benefit kya hai, iski personality kya hai, things like that. So I feel that it's only natural that people gravitate towards people. And in terms of, how that works to the advantage of influencers, I think they actually have a big responsibility. um, you know, um, First of all, their name, their personality, their entire existence is sort of, their bread and butter at the end of the day because they're monetizing that. And they need to take that seriously in terms of the brands they represent and in terms of the ideas that they represent as well, right? I mean, people are looking at, there's squads of people looking up to these people, these influencers. They carry a lot of opinion and weight in their opinion. So I think there's a big responsibility that goes with that. All it takes is, a couple of bad seeds where, people are representing brands that they don't believe in, where, it's crazy in terms of everybody loses their following and every influencer comes into question because of one or two influencers. So I think as an industry and it's evolving, but I think as influencers, as they mature, they need to definitely be mindful of that.
All right, absolutely. And you rightly pointed out that sometimes, and we've noticed this happening so often, that some influencers, oftentimes, they take undue advantage of the kind of clout or the kind of following that they have. And as a result, a lot of smaller brands have to suffer. How do you think we can control this, or can we control it at all?
I think I don't know if it's a matter of controlling it. Controlling has such a bad connotation to it. It's like, I don't think it's possible to contain and control. I think the approach needs to be to work together, right? Like, I feel that I'm a strong believer in terms of nothing can be resolved without like two people coming to the table together. So if there is a scenario where, an influencer feels a certain way about a brand, if I was the influencer, I'd use that as an opportunity to approach the brand and say, hey, in my opinion and in my followers' opinion, these are things that, could be optimized about your brand. Let us work together. And there's an opportunity as opposed to bashing it off the bat and closing off that door and possibly several other doors. So from the perspective of an influencer, I think there's opportunity there. And from the perspective of brands, I think obviously brands are held to a much higher standard now with, the kind of exposure that's available and everybody can have an opinion and say something, a tweet, a video, that's all it takes to make or break a brand. So I think brands need to be cognizant and open to working with people as well. So I think if the two are able to come to the table and have a discussion, an open discussion, who knows what kind of opportunities that can bring up.
Absolutely, and I admire how pragmatic your approach is towards these things. However, in a polarized market like Pakistan or South Asia in general, I mean, you could be marketing everything from anything from Coke to a fairness cream or a sports brand or a league. How do you make the right kind of, or construct the right kind of narrative for a polarized market like Pakistan? Because it's so different, the kind of consumers that you have. So how do you construct the right narrative?
It's hard, I think, and I think that's kind of where data comes into play, right? So I think, and I was at a conference recently and we were talking about this so often with products that we advertise like Coke or any other brand, or PSL cricket, if you think about it, right? Like, who's your target audience? It's all of Pakistan. I want everybody to love cricket. I want everybody to know about PSL, know about Coca-Cola or whatever the brand is. And so often brands tend to kind of cater to the lowest common denominator, which is everyone. when really I think the magic lies within understanding each segment of everyone, because all of those, like all of your audience is that can be easily divided and segmented into different interest groups and different opinions and things like that. So I think the narrative that like the ideal brand crafts a narrative that works for each and every single segment of society, right? So it has something unique to say to each one so that it can relate to each one. I don't think it's as simple as having like a one size message fits all. So it's not one narrative that you need to have. You need to have several that work across and speak to each person on a personalized level. At least that's how I feel.
So just speaking of constructing narratives and how they need to appeal to a wider audience, how is, because you have a lot of experience in the MNC and FMCG sector as well, so how is it different constructing a narrative for a local brand with only one or two verticals as opposed to, like, let's say, an FMCG?
Sorry, when you say a local brand with one or two verticals, in the sense of like one or two.
So let's say if you're doing something for Gul Ahmed versus something for Johnson & Johnson.
Right. Okay, so I mean, at the end of the day,
are there different dynamics that you take in mind? Is there a different work ethic that you've observed?
In terms of comparing the work ethic abroad versus over here?
Yeah.
I mean, yes, definitely there's a different work ethic in Pakistan in general versus, internationally. I think things move at a different pace. Priorities are given to different, I guess, aspects of the job, I would say. But at the end of the day, if I look at J&J or if I look at Golema, that they're still trying to speak to people, right? Like at the end of the day, they still want to make a sale, whether it's like a new lawn suit or if it's the latest sunblock, right? And so while the consumer they might be trying to go after might be different, the end objective that they want to achieve is the same. And how they approach at getting to that objective is depending on the audience that they're going after. It could be similar or it could be different, right? So my sunblock target could be a 50-year-old woman. Likewise, my target for that latest lawn ka piece or whatever that Golem is pitching could be the same woman. Obviously, their lives are different, their context is different, but in terms of what I want to do and how I go about it is I'm going to do it by way of trying to relate to her in some way, right? For sunblock, I might play on her, her fear of death maybe or disease. For Golemed, I might play on, her desire to be seen as, in with the latest trends. But at the end of the day, I want her to feel something and I want to connect with her on a one-on-one basis. So, I mean, I think the structure more or less stays the same. The paraphernalia around it changes, right?
Yeah. So we do know that, in the world of advertising in particular, or even media, digital media now, we know that it is a very, very powerful tool. And we live in a post-truth era. There are a lot of subliminal messages. There's a lot of the onus of responsibility lies within us because there are a lot of young people that are watching. So sometimes, even though Mountain Dew ads are glamorous and, they, make cliff jumping sound very exciting, but there are a lot of kids that are watching and, we have read of stories and we've read of cases where people have gotten very, very negatively influenced by media. How do you ensure that that balance is maintained?
I think, yes, there is a lot of responsibility on the brand. The onus is on the brand in terms of the messages it sends out. Because, I mean, just like an influencer is an opinion leader, a brand is an opinion leader as well, right? Just by nature of being able to reach out to so many people so quickly. So in that sense, there is a huge responsibility on brands in terms of perpetuating the right messages or messages that benefit society as opposed to detract from it. But at the same time, I think us as audiences, like, we're not innocent either, right? Like, I think we're all, to some degree, I would like to say, have minds of our own, have some basic level of understanding. So there is a little bit of responsibility on us too to be a little bit more skeptical of the messages we receive, I would say. We do it with news, right? Like, you can, if you read something on the news or if you read something on Twitter, there's so much new, like some everybody's like quick to point out, oh, this must be fake news, or this person is biased, this person is bought out by, you know, this particular party or this association.
Absolutely.
So if people can be that way about the news that they take, then they should be as skeptical about the messages they receive otherwise as well, right? So I think
Right.
we work together in a society, so brands are responsible, but we as consumers are responsible as well.
Right, absolutely. Now, Fatima, with last year, the pandemic, a lot of businesses suffered very heavy losses, while with some businesses, we saw their sales skyrocket. However, one thing that was common was that there was a learning curve. Um, a lot of us had to, do some firefighting. People picked up new skills. How was your line of work affected? What kind of firefighting did you have to do, if any, at all? And what did you learn from the pandemic?
I think, I mean, for fear, I don't know if you must have talked to so many people since the pandemic. I feel like all of us might have had the same answer. But I think one of the biggest pieces that we learned, I would say, or I personally learned, and even as an organization, we learned was that bodies don't need to be in a physical space to get work done. I think, I think in Pakistan more than anywhere, I feel that there's that mindset of like people need to come together at an office for work to happen. And you know, the remotes connecting over Skype and things that were every now and then when unavoidable. But I think with the pandemic, it's really brought home that aspect of people that are productive, that want to work, will work from anywhere. It doesn't matter if they're physically present in an office, sitting outside their boss's office, or you know, at home. So I think that was one of the things that was a big learning for us as an organization. Secondly, I do think that, I mean, we've always been, and we, you know, very empathetic towards our employees, but I think with the pandemic, it kind of brought us all a lot closer together on a more personal level. So, you know, like speaking with people over Skype or Zoom, you know, you get to see a little bit of their personal lives, you know, their pets, their babies, you know, the noises that's happening, construction that's happening in the background. So I feel like it brought us a little bit more in touch, and personalized our interactions a lot more than perhaps would have been possible in an office over, you know, a conversation at lunch. Obviously that does the job as well, but I think from this, I feel like we've actually become stronger as an organization, and have come closer together, as opposed to say if it hadn't happened, I think.
Well, good for you.
Yeah.
But speaking strictly in terms of business and making sales, I know a lot of brands, even big brands, they have to cut their budgets short, especially in terms of marketing and advertising. What kind of contingency do you have ready for the future now in terms of, obviously because sales are a big reality?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think we did initially have sort of a, oh my God, what's going to happen moment. But we quickly crafted up a plan to make sure that we were kind of, you know, salvaging what we could. And we did. I think we actually had a great year last year as a business. We were very lucky and fortunate with that. But, you know, it did highlight the need for contingencies like you talked about. And so a big part of our business plan this year is to, you know, to diversify our client base a little bit more. So we're not just relying on one industry. Because as you saw with, you know, with COVID, yes, lots of industries suffered, but then so many flourished, right?
Yes,
The
absolutely.
businesses that were agile were able to, you know, pivot the offering that they had, and were able to make the most of the situation. So I think we learned from that, and so we are looking to diversify and make sure that, you know, we're prepared for any eventuality. So
Absolutely, and I think you've really made a very valid point there in terms of one of the most important qualities for businesses now is the ability to be agile in such environments, because we don't know where the pandemic is leading us, but what we do know is how we can make the best out of the scenario. Fatima, when we talk about the growing need for digital transformation and building digital narratives, and the world around us is changing. Now we are no longer living in the era of things that are happening, but things that are happening. So everything's happening on an app. There's a lot of talk about cloudification and gamification and all kinds of buzzwords. And one of the most significant buzzwords these days is monetization. So And I know that ZTC happens to be one of the pioneers in monetization for brands. So could you please speak about this vertical and what all it involves? What kind of opportunities does it present for businesses?
Yeah, I mean, I think Z2C, as you rightly mentioned, is about monetizing certain spaces. So whether it comes to the space of sports or entertainment, or measurement or technology. So to give you an example, when it comes to the monetization of sport, so obviously we've been working with PSL for the last few years, to monetize their ad sales, right? So viewing the ad space during PSL is sold by us, but there's so many more opportunities beyond that that we would like to explore. Moreover, when it comes to the monetization of so say within e-commerce, for example, we see that especially with COVID, e-commerce is reaching new heights in Pakistan. You hear that all the time.
Absolutely.
Obviously, there's challenges still within that, and as a market, I think we're uniquely positioned in terms of how many of us are like from a populace perspective, how many of us are unbanked. So many of us don't have cards and things like that, so that makes e-commerce a little bit tricky. But we are very much in that space in terms of getting our feet wet. We've got a payment gateway that we've developed, Be Secure. It's in beta right now.
I've read about us.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're definitely getting our feet wet there. Trying to come up with solutions that work for consumers. Obviously, at the end of the day, we want to solve
not just businesses.
Exactly, not just businesses, but then at the same time, have it be something that works for us and our clients as well. At the end of the day, right? So, as I mentioned, Brainchild is the first agency in Pakistan, right? Media agency in Pakistan. So a lot of our customers are our clients, and so through Be Secure or through payment gateways or through PSL, all of these solutions that we're bringing to the table that we're monetizing, ultimately, we want them to be solutions not just for consumers, but for our clients as well. So where is there a space that we can create where the two can come together? So that's kind of what we're looking into.
Oh, that's brilliant. Fatima, in terms of let's move a little towards the HR side of things now, and since you've had a very broad vision and exposure, we've seen the evolution of some job roles and designations. So people are no longer called sales managers, but they're called client success and engagement officers. Or for instance, we've got this new buzzword, these new designations where talk about customer engagement officers, or let's say like customer experience officers, chief experience officers. There's a lot of emphasis on the word experience, whether it's in terms of your client experience, your customer experience, or generally with regards to any product or service that you're selling. What does this term experience, user experience, customer experience, client experience entail for you? Why is it important in this day and age?
I think it's funny you say that, because actually Publicis, like Starcom, which is one of the agencies we do business as, is known as the experience agency, the human experience agency. So I think more than ever, we've evolved in terms of, I think agencies historically used to think of it like we need to have one big idea, and that's the idea that's gonna, be everywhere. Then we moved into like connections, like it's all about connecting with consumers. We need to establish a one-on-one relationship. And I think now everything is moving towards experience, because we're realizing as agencies and as business, as business professionals and also as consumers, that consumers want experiences. They don't want a connection. They don't want, they don't want a big idea. They want to feel something. They want to be engaged through all of their senses, right? And that's what an experience ultimately is. And I think just by changing that word and bringing that word into a title or into a framework, it changes the context of what you do, right? So if I'm giving somebody an experience versus I am,
making a sale.
Making a sale or communicating with them or managing a relationship, it's very different to like, I'm providing an experience. It's so much more immersive. It's so much more personal.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's a lot more personal. So I think it makes all the difference in that sense. And I mean, I'm not a fan of buzzwords, but this one I particularly do like.
Right, absolutely. Fatima, when we talk about engagement and success and everything, thing that comes to mind is that when I was reading Elon Musk, and he quoted that if you're not failing enough, means you're not, innovating enough.
Yeah.
Have you seen failure in your life? What has it taught you?
Yeah,
It
I
seems
think
very unlikely looking at your profile, but
no, there's a lot of failures. But I mean, I think one of the biggest things I've kind of learned over the years is how you define failure. So often when you're starting out, you assume failure as I wanted to achieve X and I didn't get X, and so I failed. When honestly, like I've readjusted what that means to me, and to me, failure now is where if I go in at the start of the day or by the end of the day, I don't have something to show for myself in terms of, having tried to solve a problem, giving it my 100%, to me, that's failure. So I think over the years, that's kind of evolved where to me, failure is if I don't give it my 100%. And it doesn't matter what the outcome is, in the sense that if I achieve whatever it is, great. If I don't achieve it, maybe I'll try a different way another day. But it's the what the satisfaction that I get from making sure that I've put my full effort in, that to me is success. And so by default, not doing that is failure for me. So in earlier in the day, like earlier on in my career, yeah, I could say I failed. I didn't get that one promotion, or we didn't win that one client. That would be failure, if you will. And yes, there's lots of learning there that, oh, we should have done things differently or tried something different, or said something new, or whatever it may be. But I think over the years, I've evolved in terms of my definition of failure to make it be a little bit more easier on me as a person. I feel. So yeah, that's, to me, that's failure. And yes,
Fatima,
I fail all the time.
your positivity and pragmatism, it's unmatched. Let me tell you that, and I can see why you're such a brilliant addition to the brand. It's been inspiring. It's been a learning experience, and I would request you to please join us for one of our later shows as well. We do a global thought space where we put together some more thought leaders and really work towards a policy framework and improving corporate governance. So thank you so much for your time. Unfortunately, we have to wrap up here, but upon an ending note, I know you're one of the recent inductees, but how has being a part of CxO Global Forum impacted your personal or professional life?
I would say first of all, thank you. I would love to be a part of what you're talking about. And in terms of being a part of the group, I think from a professional perspective, especially, I feel I'm the kind of person, I'm not a big networker. Personally, I kind of get my blinders on and get the work done. That's sort of the motto I live by. So I think being part of the group has actually been great for, one, meeting other professionals within Pakistan, being exposed to more points of views and opinions. I think we're part of a WhatsApp group that's very, very active. So yeah, no, definitely, it's been good in terms of getting me exposed to new ideas and new opinions and new people.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Fatima, and we really appreciate everything that you said. And we're so proud of you once again. We hope to hear more from you to the future. Thank you for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. And we hope to see you next time with another very special guest. For those of you who want to learn more about Fatima, you can log on to her LinkedIn. And for those of you who still don't know who we are and what we do, log on to www.cxoforum.global and become a part of an unmatched league of thought leaders. Thank you.